Well, hello there, everyday Americans. Paul Engel here with the Constitution Study. We are live once again. I'm glad you could join me. I'm glad you can join in the work that we are doing to try and help everybody read and study the Constitution. I need to warn you, I'm trying some new things tonight. So, hello there, whoops, Paul Engel, including one of the problems I have is we are live once again. I'm glad you could join me. Somewhere I've got a loop that we are doing to try and help everybody read and study the Constitution. I need to warn you, I'm trying some new things tonight. There we go. Everything should be muted now. Hopefully. Sorry about that. See, we're trying new things. I'm actually broadcasting to multiple destinations here. I'm actually up on YouTube. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Periscope. So we've got all of these destinations. Apparently, one of them I forgot to mute or something. It's fixed. Don't worry about it. So before we get started with today's story, I wanted to update you on a few things besides the fact that now you can watch the Constitution Study live on multiple platforms. As I said, YouTube, Facebook, Periscope. I will try others if I can figure out how. I'm testing out this new service that makes that workable. So if you have any suggestions, please put them in. As always, as I go along, if you have questions or comments, put them in the comment section of the platform you're reading on, you're watching on. I will try to get to all of them. Like I said, it's a little new, first time, maybe a little sketchy, but if you really want to participate live, I'm going to suggest you go to theconstitutionstudy.com/live and you register for the live stream. When I do these live broadcasts, I use Zoom so I can actually interact real time with people. So it's really nice to get your questions and to answer them from the different social medias. If I can get you online and we can actually chat, I think it's a lot better way of communicating back and forth. And I like it. It's a lot easier if we have a conversation than if I try to, you chat me a question and I try to answer it, and by the time you respond, someone else has gotten in the way. I'm also going to try and do more of these live broadcasts. Kind of made a test for myself that for the next, at least for the next couple of months, I'm going to try to do 2 of these live broadcasts, maybe more. If you get more people that are involved, if I get more people showing up, more people really involved and engaged, I will commit to doing more of these events because it's really about everybody learning, everybody getting engaged, everybody getting involved. What else is going on? Oh, I've got a new webinar coming out. Hopefully you realize that a little later this month, September 17th, in fact, 1 week from today is Constitution Day. So for Constitution Day, I'm doing a Constitution 101 class. It's a free webinar. It'll be held in the afternoon. You can find out more details at constitutionstudy.com/101. And even if you can't join live, register for the event. I will send you a link to the recording once I have it all processed and uploaded and ready to go. And it should be a very interesting program. I'm really kind of targeting the middle school, high school student in the time frame. I'm trying to keep it to about an hour, maybe an hour and a half of questions, but it should be a very interesting event. I hope you will join me. So before we get started, once again, I'm glad you could join me. If you have any questions, please put them in the chats. I will be going through the different chat platforms as I get going along here. I cannot really answer questions when I'm in the middle of the presentation, though. I can't see them. It's one of the quirks of Mac, the way it works. But please put those questions in. I will certainly save time for questions at the end. And let's start talking about this. Hang on, so where'd it go? There it is. So we got that. I did that. I'm going to be doing, if you're interested, I plan this October to do another webinar, this one on presidential elections and the Electoral College. There have been a lot of questions about the Electoral College, not only the national popular vote. I did a video on, can Nancy Pelosi become president on January 20th if there's a mess up in the elections? That's all up there. I'm actually going to do a whole webinar on the presidential election and the Electoral College. I'm going to do another one in December for Bill of Rights Day. So if you want to find out more, if you want to know what webinars and what's coming up, please sign up for my newsletter. It's the best way to kind of get updated with what's coming on, just go to constitutionstudy.com. You can go to /newsletter, or just go to the main page. You'll see sign up for the newsletter. I don't go nuts. I only send out about one newsletter a month. So unless there's something interesting, that's the best way. Sign up for that list and you'll be notified both monthly with the newsletter, but you'll also get notifications when I schedule new webinars, new events. So with that, let's talk about Citizen Heal Thyself. All right, let's get this over here and let me share my, there we go. And go, boom. All right, and I picked Citizen Heal Thyself. It's kind of a play on the words physician heal thyself, because it's kind of the feeling I get. So I'm always asking people for questions and comments, and I love when people ask questions, when they come up with comments and all that stuff. So it was really neat. I got a comment on one of the social media platforms from a follower, and come on, there we go. And the question went like this: hey, here's a good idea for a video. I like that. You're telling me what type of information you'd like me to work on. So just recently, the NRA is being sued, and a lot of comments I see from the conservatives is that they are worried what would happen to the Second Amendment if the NRA did get dismantled or whatnot. Now, no, this is not a video about the NRA or the Second Amendment, but it's the next part of the question that really caught my attention. He says the only problem with these thoughts is that it was never the duty of the NRA to fight for Americans' rights. It was those Americans' duty to fight for their own rights. Now, don't get me wrong. I have no problem with people getting together for a good cause. If you want to donate money to a good cause, NRA, GOA, I don't care. Right? I don't even mind people getting together and working together. That's a good thing. But you see, when people cast off their responsibility to protect their own rights, when they expect someone else to protect their rights for them, you see, that's when we start to get into a problem. Or as I like to say it, Houston, we have a problem. Now, put aside the NRA. The idea that the only protections for your rights comes from an organization you donate to, well, it reminds me a little bit of a line from Dickens. You see, every year, my family and I watch A Christmas Carol during the Christmas season. And there's this one line that it reminded me of.
Are there no prisons?
Plenty of prisons.
The workhouses, they're still in operation?
They are. I wish I could say they were not.
The treadmill, the poorhouses, still in full vigor?
All very busy, sir.
I was afraid from what you said that something had stopped them in full force. My taxes help to support the public institutions which I've mentioned, and they cost enough. Those who are badly off must go there.
See, it seems to me too many Americans, when asked to defend their rights and liberties, well, their answer is, where's the NRA? Where's the right to life? Why isn't someone else doing it for me? I mean, we have all these 501c3 organizations. I donate to these. Isn't that enough? Well, sadly, the answer is no. And actually, I don't even know if it's that sadly. I mean, let's face it. There are plenty of examples of groups and organizations that started out with a good cause, only to morph over time into something else. If I'm going to put my faith in another organization to protect my rights, that scares me. Because now my rights are not under my control, they're under somebody else's control. And if that organization changes, if it morphs from the function that I donated to and becomes something else, well, right under my nose, my protections disappear. Want some examples? Whoops, helps I hit the right button. Now, the House of Representatives is in Washington. It was designed to represent your interests, the interests of the American people. They are the representatives of the people. Tell me, how's that working for you nowadays? Or public schools. I just finished editing a video talking about what's going on in some public schools. See, the public schools were created to help ensure that all children could get a basic education. Yet today it seems teachers spend more time talking about social justice, racial hatred, and lies about our nation than they do teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic. Unions were created to protect the rights of the workers, yet today it seems many of them are more interested in politics and elections than in the well-being of their members. See, today, look at just how many people have invested all of their hopes for the protections of their rights, even for their jobs and provisions, into somebody else. How many Americans have put their hope for their right to keep and bear arms in the hands of the NRA? Now, I believe there's some issues with the NRA, and I'm a gun lover, right? I think the NRA's purported purpose, what it was created for, is a good thing, to protect the Second Amendment rights, to be an organization that helps do that. But if that organization has stumbled, who protects your rights? If you've invested all of your rights protection in that organization and it stumbles, where are you left? Now, the commenter went on. He said, heck, they wouldn't have to fight for anything if they knew that any law repugnant to the Constitution is null and void. Instead, all they would do is simply assert their rights. Well, it's a very good point. And I know we're going to get a little bit off topic, but I think it's important because I think it helps understand the point this person is making. You see, any law repugnant to the Constitution is void. It's empty. It has no substance. Now, to help understand this, we need to look at a couple of different sources. The first of which is actually the Constitution itself. Article 6, Clause 2 reads, "This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land. And the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding." See, this means that the U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land, of this country. It's superior to state law, it's superior to state constitution. It's also superior to federal law. Now, you may be saying, wait, Paul, it says right there that it says that the laws of the United States are included in the supreme law of the land. But notice it doesn't say that all federal laws, all laws of the United States, only those made in pursuance of the Constitution. So a law that's not made pursuant to the Constitution is you're still subjecting it to the Constitution. Similarly, it doesn't say that all treaties, but only treaties made under the authority of the United States. A treaty that's beyond the authority of the United States is not the supreme law of the land. So a law of the United States that is not made pursuant to the Constitution, meaning following everything that the Constitution says, it's not included in the supreme law of the land. But where do we get this idea that a law that violates the Constitution is void? Well, it comes from two places. First, it comes from the words of Alexander Hamilton in Federalist Papers number 78. "There is no position which depends on clear principle than that every act of a delegated authority contrary to the tenor of the commission under which it is exercised is void." See, the first thing we have to remember is that all governmental power is a delegated authority. Federal government power, state government power, local government power, they are delegated authorities. Where do I get that? Well, let's start with the Declaration of Independence. It says, to secure these rights, these unalienable rights that they listed, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. See, governments are instituted among men, not the other way around. We, the people, we create governments. And in this country, for the most part, we do it by constitutions, at least at the state and federal level. Sure, your city or your county may have a charter, But when we talk about the United States or the states themselves, we use a constitution. And those constitutions delegate powers to governments. See, read your state's constitution. If you search a little bit, you'll find language something like this. This comes from the Tennessee Constitution. I picked it because I live in Tennessee now. But Article 1, Section 1 says that all power is inherent in the people, and all free governments are founded on their authority and instituted for their peace, safety, and happiness. For the advancement of those ends, they have at all times an unalienable and indefeasible right to alter, reform, or abolish the government in such manner as they may think proper. So any legitimate authority that government has to exercise, it has been delegated by the people. All power is inherent in the people. We, the people. We created states, and we delegated them certain powers. And those states came together, and in our name created a constitution for a union called the United States of America. And they took some of their delegated powers and delegated them to the federal government. And we, the people, approved of it, so it was legal. Now, when someone assumes an office, whether it's an elected office or an appointed office, they are commissioned into that office. And the president has the authority to commission all federal offices. And when they are commissioned, they take an oath to faithfully exercise the powers of that office. So if they attempt to exercise their authority contrary to their commission, in other words, if they try to exercise a power beyond or contrary to their office of the Constitution, that act is void. It is literally empty. It has no value. It has no meaning. Now, the second place we find this idea of a law repugnant to the Constitution being void comes from the Supreme Court. Yeah, that's Supreme Court of the United States. See, there's this wonderful case called Marbury versus Madison. And if you're like me, you spend much time dealing with the Constitution, especially around lawyers, they'll tell you Marbury versus Madison is the case where the court assumed the responsibility of judicial review, taking laws from Congress and reviewing it. And while the words are there, it doesn't mean anything like what these people said. There's a very interesting point. If we read the opinion that was written by Chief Justice Marshall, we find it is a position too plain to be contested that the Constitution controls any legislative act repugnant to it, or that the legislature may alter the Constitution by an ordinary act. This is all right. It is so obvious. It is so plain. It is so ridiculously obvious. That the idea that the Constitution controls a legislative act repugnant to it. That when a legislature passes a law that's in violation of the Constitution controls it. It's either the Constitution that's going to control it, or Congress can modify the Constitution through an ordinary act. The opinion goes on. Between these alternatives, there is no middle ground. The Constitution is either a superior paramount law, unchangeable by ordinary means, or it is on a level with ordinary legislative act, and like other acts, is alterable when the legislature shall please to alter it. In other words, does the legislature have control over the Constitution, or is it controlled by the Constitution? There is no third way. This idea of a living Constitution, and the Congress can determine, or even the courts can determine what the Constitution means. They can rewrite it simply by passing laws, is ludicrous. He goes on. Certainly, all those who have framed written constitutions contemplate them as forming the fundamental and paramount law of the nation. And consequently, the theory of every such government must be that an act of the legislature repugnant to the Constitution is void. This should be so blatantly obvious, you can't mistake it. So any law that is repugnant to the Constitution that created that position, right? Any act of a governor from the state constitution, any act of Congress or the judiciary contrary to the federal Constitution. And oh, by the way, since the federal Constitution is supreme law of the land, that also means that acts of of state legislatures, state judges, state executive branch that is contrary to the Constitution of the United States is void. The Chief Justice went on, if an act of the legislature repugnant to the Constitution is void, does it, notwithstanding its invalidity, bind the courts and oblige them to give it effect? Now, this is an important point because I get this question a lot. And it revolves around what do we do? Because the problem we have is we have legislative acts that are repugnant to the Constitution, that are invalid, but we have courts upholding them as if they are valid. What I call the emperor has no clothes syndrome. You have a void, an empty law that everyone acts like it's real, it's wonderful, it's great, can't you see? But it's void, it's empty. Back to the opinion. Or in other words, though it be not law, does it constitute a rule as operative as if it was a law? This would be to overthrow the fact, in fact, what was established in theory, and it would seem at first view an absurdity too gross to be insisted upon. Stop and think about this for a minute. Now, yes, we're talking about the NRA as an example of how do we protect our rights. Well, the first thing we have to recognize is that these gun control laws that infringe on your ability to keep and bear arms are void. I don't care that the court says it's okay because the court doesn't have the authority to overturn the Constitution. See, if I want to put this in today's context, what do we do when those who've been delegated an authority ignore their commission and attempt to enforce laws that are void? If a law repugnant to the Constitution is void, and it is quite plain that laws that say, well, you can't keep and bear arms unless it's punishment for some act, therefore they are repugnant to the Constitution, therefore they are void, but they keep getting enforced. Now you have to understand, the reason we have a judicial branch is to help deal with just this situation. Now, lawyers are taught, and many people expound, that the courts are the final arbiters of what the Constitution says. There's just a problem with that. See, the legal system has actually taken this so far as they declare the opinion of judges to have the force of law. Who here has heard Roe v. Wade's the law of the land? Who here has heard of other rulings? Right? That's the law of the land. They even give them a euphemistic name. They call it case law. You talk to a lawyer, if you read court opinions, what do you find? They refer to case law over and over and over again. There's just one really glaring problem with all that. Nowhere in the Constitution are the courts given the authority to establish case law, to determine what the Constitution does and does not say. You see, Article 1, Section 1, Clause 1 of the Constitution states that all legislative power herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and a House of Representatives. Now, the Webster's 1828 dictionary, Noah Webster was one of the founding fathers. He was a framer of the Constitution. He defined legislative powers as capable of enacting laws. So if all power, all legislative power, all power to enact law remains in Congress, how can a court create law? How can a court create anything like law? For that matter, how can an executive agency create anything with the force of law? They can't. They do it by violating the Constitution, by acting in a manner contrary to it, and they've been allowed to get away with it so long, they keep doing it. Now, if all legislative power is granted to Congress, it is an act repugnant to the Constitution for the judicial branch to enact laws, to modify laws, to change laws, even to reinterpret laws. And since Mr. Webster defined judicial power that was what was delegated to the courts as that branch of government which is concerned with the trial and determination of controversies between parties and of criminal prosecution. We see there is nothing in the Constitution that grants the court the authority to declare a law unconstitutional. Therefore, that statement is void by the very words of the Supreme Court. Now, the courts can determine in the case before them that the law as applied violates the Constitution. But that's the limit of the scope of their power. A judge has no authority to order another branch of government to disregard law. They can make their case. They can say, here's our opinion. That's why they're called opinions, not laws, not rulings. They're called opinions for a reason. Here's our opinion. We've gone through. Let's see. Here, and here. This is a violation of the Constitution. This is why we have decided not to apply this law in this case. And by the way, we recommend that it be disregarded by all other agencies. Not we order, we recommend. She then goes to the executive branch and say, ooh, gee, I didn't think about that. If this law is unconstitutional, and while they've got pretty good evidence that it is, then if the president, where all executive power is actually vested, is there to faithfully execute the laws of the United States, to look at a law that is void, well, he probably shouldn't execute it, should he? See, anything else is repugnant to the Constitution. These nationwide injunctions and bans and simply a court saying, nope, that's unconstitutional, and having it disappear is repugnant to the Constitution. And if a legislative act is repugnant to the Constitution, is void, isn't a judicial one or an executive one void as well? So now we've gone down this rabbit hole, and explain what he's talking about. What he's really talking about is, as he said, instead, all they would do is simply assert their rights. I don't know if I put it quite that way. What I call it is civil noncompliance. How can it be illegal to not follow a law that is void? Stop and think for a moment. How can it be illegal to not follow a law that is void? See, this is why people say, well, we're going to sue somebody. Now, the problem with suing somebody is you're going to a government agent to beg for relief from another government agent. If we go to a state court to get relief from a state executive or a state legislative act, you're asking a government employee to find against the government that pays their bills. If you go to a federal court, you're asking a federal employee to find against another government, either the federal government or state government. They're referees that work for one of the teams. Now, sure, you also have 18 U.S.C. 242. You have the criminal aspect of it. But again, that's going to go to a court. So what do we do when all three branches of government violate their oaths? They violate their commissions, and they enforce laws that are repugnant to the Constitution. We see our founding fathers actually put protections for just such a situation in the Constitution. Where do we find this one? In the 10th Amendment. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. So if the power to determine what is and is not repugnant to the Constitution is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, and it is not prohibited by the Constitution to the states, then who has the power to make such a determination? The states. Now that makes sense when we remember that the Constitution is a compact, an agreement between the states. But what do we do when those in state government fail in their duties to protect the rights of their citizens? Well, there's two things we can do. See, first, if those we hire to represent us in our state governments aren't doing their jobs, they need to be fired. It is far past time we stop playing footsie with our employees and hold them accountable. It's far past time we start using nice words and worry about party. I don't care. If you are not doing the job, you need to be fired. I don't care if you're a donkey. I don't care if you're an elephant. I don't care if you're a kazoo. If you're not going to do your job, you need to be fired. Too many Americans have been bought off with the promise of money or services, or just the promise that the government's going to come after their stuff last. Are your rights really worth the freebies that you're actually paying for? Are the liberties of you, your family, and your children worth the crumbs that government will let fall from their table? Then stop playing around and fire the bums. If you get more corrupt bums, fire them as well. Even if you get worse bums, you can always fire them. But until those we hire to represent us realize we will not take their bribes anymore, until they are more worried about being caught violating their oath of office than losing some endorsement, they will continue to be derelict in their duties, and we will continue to pay the price, not just in taxes, but in our rights and liberties being crushed. We have to stop saying, well, the NRA or this organization will protect our rights. No, it is time for you and me, Mr. and Mrs. American, to stand up and say, no, we will defend our rights. We will stand up for our rights. You don't have a choice anymore. If you aren't going to do your job, you're fired. If you're going to come after me, I'm going to stand up. And oh, by the way, if you come after my neighbor, I'm going to stand up for them as well. Which brings me to the second way we do this. And that is the second layer of protection against repugnant laws. Not just the states, but your city and your county, specifically your sheriff. So your sheriff is the chief law enforcement officer in your county. They do not work for the state. They do not work for the county. They're an elected official. They work for the people of the county. Now, some states have stripped the sheriff of some of their independence. For the most part, though, the sheriff has the power to protect you from the infringement from agents of both the state and federal governments. Do some research. Search for stories about Sheriff Mack, a person who's willing to stand up to federal agents that were infringing the rights of citizens of his county. I highly recommend you introduce yourself to your sheriff. Find out if he or she will fulfill their oath to protect your rights. And if they won't, they should be the first on the list that you've picked to be fired. They work for you. They are public servants, not the other way around. So I love this comment. I didn't use his or her name. I'm not even sure if it's a man or a woman. They've got a handle. All I know is their handle. I don't have their permission to use their name or their handle, so I didn't use it. But I really liked it, not simply because it's something I've been talking about lately, and that is stop waiting for someone else to protect your rights for you. You need to stand up for your own rights. But it really sent me down this path of, what are we doing? If our rights truly are unalienable, if government is given power from us, not the other way around, it's about darn time we start acting like it. And it's about time we not only protect our own rights, but we be willing to stand up for our neighbors' rights. Whether you're the gym owners in New Jersey, or the salon lady in Texas, or any one of the dozens of and possibly hundreds of people who are being fined and in some cases jailed for simply exercising their right to use their property, their businesses, how they see fit, for standing up to a government that is trying to enforce an invalid, a void, and empty law. we should be standing with them. We should be helping to protect them. We should be enlisting our sheriffs and our neighbors to do that, because the option, the alternative to that is you're not a citizen anymore. You're a subject. And you don't live in a republic anymore. You live in a dictatorship. And the only difference between America and a banana republic becomes an election. And even those are being corrupted. So that I'll take some time. I'll do some questions here. Again, if you have any questions, please put them in the comments. Now, I do apologize. I am using a new piece of software, so I need to make sure how any of this is going to work. Okay, let's see here. Let me take a look at Zoom. No, I don't have any questions in the Zoom meeting. I don't have a lot of people in the Zoom meeting, but I'm hoping this becomes a little more interesting because Zoom is quite cool. Okay. Let's see here. Where are we here? Much love for what you do from New York. David, all right, thank you. David, thank you. Thank you so much. David's making a point of, thanking me for the work that I do. And, I appreciate that. It's lonely. And I meet a lot of people that we think we're on our own. I work from my home office working on this stuff, and I've been trying to get to more in-person events, and it's really been very hard lately with everything else that's been going on. But, David, I really appreciate that because it lets me know that we're making a difference. I do a lot of work for this, and I appreciate it. It's become a love of my life. It's something I'm glad I have the opportunity to do something I truly enjoy. But when I have people that are coming alongside and saying, yes, we love it, we're working, we're helping, that does make a difference. Cindy says they're supposed to work for us, but instead they do backroom deals and take our vote away. Well, yes and no, Cindy. Yes, they are supposed to work for us, and yes, they do backroom deals. But the only way they can take your vote away is there's two ways, right? One is is fraud. Right? They can manipulate the elections. If you check the website, I did a story maybe a year or so ago on the Battle of Athens, Tennessee. Look up the Battle of Athens, Tennessee, because the votes were being stolen, and this is just after World War II. A bunch of vets came home, found out their votes were being stolen, and they fixed it. And they didn't fix it by going, oh, what are we going to do? The sheriff and the county, they're being bad. They didn't go to the NRA or some other 501c3. They did ask for help from the federal government. And when the federal government didn't do anything, they took care of it themselves. In fact, there was an armed battle in Athens, Tennessee, and that ended up proving that the vote was being stolen. And it's a very interesting story. I'm already giving a lot of away. Look it up again, constitutionstudy.com. Look for Athens, Tennessee. It's a wonderful story. The problem is I meet way too many Americans who don't need their vote to be taken away. They've given up. They either don't vote or they simply vote for the party. They pay very little attention. They don't actually vet their candidates. The other day, I met my sheriff. I've been trying to meet with him for a while, and I finally met him and told him that I wanted to call his office, set up a meeting, because I wanted to have a sit-down talk with him. And he's like, why? What do you want to do? He says, no, I want to talk. I want to know where you sit on certain topics. I want to know what your issues are. I want to know, are you going, I want specifics of, are you going to protect my family and their rights? And if you are, I'm willing to stand with you and help you. What can we do? So it's important that we don't let our votes become meaningless by not using them or simply throwing them away. We need to find better candidates. and we need to take it from there. Hang on, what's going on here? Where's my chat thing isn't showing me all my. I was afraid of that. Okay, my chat thing isn't showing me all my messages. Oh, there we are. Let's see. Get this in the right order now. Okay, let's see. Papa Prez. He's glad he found the channel super informative. First Amendment rights, basically boiling down to finding someone with the stones to prosecute. Oh, yeah. So Papa Rez is talking about multiple violations of my First Amendment rights. Papa Rez, I'll give you a fair warning. Now, the lawyers and the judges get this wrong because the First Amendment starts out with Congress shall make no law. So unless the violation came from a law based on a law made by Congress, it's probably not really a violation of the First Amendment. It is most likely, though, a violation of your state constitution. See, every state in the Union has its own Bill of Rights. And so when we talk about freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of press, to peaceably assemble and to petition, more often than not, if it's a state agency doing it, it's a state issue. And now, the federal courts ignore this. The Supreme Court has, in an act that is reprehensible to the Constitution, said, no, we can take this word that says Congress, and we just don't worry about that. We'll just apply it to all the states out of thin air. But I agree. I'd love to find people that could fight for this. I have been pushing for several months now to find these people who are having their Fifth Amendment, their Fourth Amendment, their 14th Amendment rights violated, to not simply complain, not even sue, but to actually call the FBI and press charges. It is a federal crime to use the color of law to deprive you of a right protected by the Constitution of the United States. So while I don't know the specific information, so Papa Prez 1, I do give you that one caveat, but I agree. We need to find people that are willing to stand up and say, yep, here we go. Caladino, yes, people bribing people with their own money. Absolutely. And I use the term bribe. The American people have been bribed, and we willingly accept it. You can put all sorts of neat names on it. You can call it pork. You can call it anything you want. But what you're dealing with is a bribe. There are those in government that are giving you something to change your mind, to pervert your judgment. That's the definition of a bribe. No police for the trucker. No police for the police brother. Not quite sure what you're talking about there. Things would be pretty crazy if we didn't have police. Now, the vast majority of police officers I've met, vast majority of all law enforcement officers I've met, are good, decent men and women that really care about their communities and want to keep people safe. But we're back to the whole question is they do not have a legal affirmative requirement to keep you safe. So, you still have to, I have a placard I put together. Go to the constitutionsite.com, search for Knowing Your Rights. It's a one-page sheet that you can show. By the way, Mr. Officer, Mrs. Officer, you're violating this constitutional right here. And here's the law that says if you do that, you're acting under color of law. If you do that, that's a federal crime. Understand, my phone call after I call my lawyer will be to make sure the FBI is contacted because I want to press charges. When was the last time? Can you imagine the last time a law enforcement officer was threatened with criminal charges for violating your rights? All right, so what are the views of people who reject judicial supremacy? Well, they reject the idea that the idea that the judiciary is supreme. Judicial supremacy are the refs saying we're not only going to be the referees, we're going to make the rules. We live in a society. Understand, when people go to law school, they are not taught the Constitution. they're taught judges' opinions about the Constitution that people euphemistically call constitutional law. So you have, I mean, I used to be a football fan, but imagine your favorite football team where the referees not only read the rule book, they didn't read the rule book. They read what their buddies said the rules book said, and they made up the rules for themselves. There is nothing in the Constitution that gives the judicial branch the authority to even enforce their own opinions. If you read Federalist number 78, Alexander Hamilton talks about the court has no power. They don't control the sword or the purse. They have neither force nor will. They have only judgment. But we're back to that. That's why I believe we need to work so much on education. You, me, spread the word, because it is the misinformation of the American people that leads them to believe that the Supreme Court rules, or that any court rules. You want to see me jump out of my chair, watch someone tell me that a court ruled. Courts don't rule, right? But we've been taught that because it's reinforced over and over and over again. It's why we need to work to help educate people. Yeah, we're a small ragtag bunch right now. Then again, so were the patriots that first started fighting the British. Pick your metaphor. We start small. We start teaching people what the truth is. And guess what? When people start learning that just because a court said it's so, doesn't mean it. Just because the court says something is constitutional doesn't make it true. Well, we start changing it. We start opening people's eyes. It becomes like the Matrix, right? They start opening their eyes and things become different. They become dramatically different. Here, let me go back here. I was just checking my Zoom. Nothing there. Okay. Love the work. Thank you. Thank you, Trucker. Yeah, no problem. Better late than never. I will. I mean, obviously, you can follow the recording. Let's see. Kalindo, 2020 election is going to be interesting. Universal mail-in ballots is a really bad idea. I absolutely agree that it's a bad idea. In fact, in most cases, it's an illegal idea. So I was asked to consult with a group in North Dakota dealing with mail-in ballots for their primary. And I found some very interesting stuff in the Constitution of the state of North Dakota. I believe in most states, it is probably illegal, especially at this point, to go to all mail-in ballots. There's one state, is it Oregon or Washington, I think, has an all mail-in ballot system. You're right. Mail-in ballots are a disaster. And they're a disaster for several reasons. Yes, they're prone to fraud. They're prone to miscounts. Many of the ballots get set aside. Here's the thing to remember. There is no, what I call a chain of custody. See, if you go to a polling place, right, you walk in, you show them your ID. They say, yes, that is you. No, you haven't voted before. Look at the list. No, you haven't voted before, for this election. So, okay, here's your ballot. You take the ballot, you go to some place behind a blind, you fill out your ballot, you walk it up to some machine, you feed it to the machine. You've maintained custody of the ballot from the point it was issued to you to the point it was counted. Now, that's important because it provides two things. One, it provides proof that you actually voted. It makes sure that chain of custody means no one has gotten between you and the voting machine to change your vote. Yet your vote is still anonymous. There's nothing on that piece of paper or that electronic ballot that has your name on it. You cannot do that with mail-in voting, right? Mail-in ballot, because by definition, that ballot has to go through multiple hands between the person casting the vote and the person counting the vote. Even set aside that you have no proof that the person casting the vote is a person legally authorized to cast that vote. So there you disenfranchise people. You have no chain of custody. So you've got no proof that the vote, once it was cast, was actually counted that way. And there's been a lot of discussion about, what happens when votes are late. Do you realize that there's a constitutional requirement that the electors be chosen on election day? The Constitution gives Congress the authority to set the date when the electors are chosen. Congress has set that as the Tuesday after the first. No, it's the Tuesday after the first Monday in November. The electors for president have to be appointed by then, by law. They have 3 weeks to where those electors get together and actually cast their votes. The state has up to 6 days before that date in mid-December to deal with any controversies about the electors. That is part of the Constitution and federal law made to support the Constitution. So there's, again, I did an article, constitutionstudy.com. I did an article talking about this. There's a video, watch it. Will Nancy Pelosi be president on January 20th? I go into a bit more detail about that. But you're right, it's a mess. And the funny part is, it is, I'm assuming we're all familiar with the game, Russian roulette. It literally is playing Russian roulette with an automatic weapon. And if you know anything about firearms, that means you get shot every time. There is no need to do this full mail-in ballot. If you can go to Walmart, you can vote. You can go to a polling place. If it is safe enough for you to go to the grocery store, it is safe enough for you to go to a polling place. All they got to do is put those stupid stickers on the floor and say, please stand 6 feet apart. That's all they have to do. This is a problem that politicians have made, and now they're asking you to give up your rights to a free, fair election, to having your vote anonymously counted, to know that it's being validly counted and that you're doing it anonymously. They are stealing that from you because they created the situation. Now, whether they did it intentionally is a debate for another day. But your right to a fair election is being stolen from you because politicians have used the excuse of COVID-19 to create this hysteria, and they're using that as an excuse to turn your vote from, we're talking about voting like we're in Iran. Sure, you'll cast your vote for whoever you want, but do you really think anybody but who the mullahs want gets chosen? That's what we're turning into a banana republic, people, and we're sitting back and letting it happen. And if your state is pushing for an all mail-in ballot, then an all mail-in election, then why are the people of that state not standing on the doorsteps of the legislature going, hell no, hell no? And I'm sorry if that language offends you, but I have to ask you, what is your rights worth? Because if they can steal your vote, they can steal your rights. And what is your child's rights worth? The Constitution was created to secure the blessings of liberty, and we are watching it being wadded up and thrown away like toilet paper. And we're not going to do anything except maybe complain on Facebook. I'm tired of it. We need to stand up and say, no, this far and no longer. We're going to stand our ground. This is it. No more.
Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you.
Okay. I was wondering, isn't it the Electoral College that decides who becomes president? I can't remember if I'm remembering that correctly.
Well, it's funny. Actually, grab my water over here. There actually is, the term Electoral College is a bit of a misnomer. College in this context means a gathering. So basically, every state gets a number of electors. Every state gets a number of electors based on their representation in Congress. Those electors are appointed in a manner the state legislature decides. And you are correct. The state those electors are the ones that actually vote for president. The problem is we have so manipulated, twisted, and we've allowed the system to be so destroyed that it's a difference without meaning. Do you know you're supposed to be there's supposed to be a separate ballot for president and vice president?
Yeah, yeah, I know
Right?
that.
Yeah, but we don't do that, do we?
No.
We have a ticket. We have it's a mess. I did an article about that as well. It is a mess. It's one of the reasons why I'm doing this webinar next month on presidential elections in the Electoral College, because I want people to understand how it's legally supposed to work and to start to see how we've let political parties manipulate the states to take away your choice, to determine to tell your state how you want them to vote for president. It's a real mess.
So then, like, what's the point of the citizens voting for the president, if it's not supposed to legally work that way?
Well, we're back to the legislature decides how to appoint electors. So when you vote for president, you get in the ballot, and if you look real close, yes, you're voting for rep and senator and all that other stuff. But when it comes to the section for president, you'll notice you're voting for electors for president. That's because we came up with this brilliant idea that, oh yeah, the people should. I'm not going to say I know what these people were thinking, but you see in the early 20th century, this push towards we're going to let the people decide. Now, I understand some logic of it, but it's what they're trying to do is turn us from a republic into a democracy. Our founding fathers hated democracy. They were terrified of it. My favorite quote, it comes from Benjamin Franklin: a democracy is two wolves and a lamb voting on what to have for lunch. Liberty is a well-armed lamb contesting the vote. So it's actually I would recommend go to the website, look over the last couple weeks. You'll see I've done a couple on presidential elections and the mess that we've made. But when I post the schedule for the presidential election webinar, sign up for that. It'll be the same rules, right? If you can't make it live, there'll be a recording, and that'll answer a lot of your questions. I believe it's the same reason why we have the 17th Amendment and we have a popular vote for the Senate. It's because the states didn't want to do the state legislatures didn't want to do their jobs, so they figured we'd get the people to do it for them. Actually choosing electors was work, and they said, well, we won't bother. We'll shuffle it off onto somebody else. And that's basically what was done. All right, let's see. Let me go back to some of the other typed in questions. Trucker, I don't think the Constitution is a living document. I believe it'd be an objective reference work. How do you view the objective lens? I'm going to say this. I've used it a lot in my IT career. Depends on what they mean by living document. See, the Constitution can be changed. There is a process. One of the reasons we have a Constitution is because the Articles of Confederation had no process for amending them. There was no process to fix any problems in it, so they basically had to start from scratch. They fixed that in the Constitution with Article 5, which allows us to amend it. Now, if you look at a living document as one that can be updated with the times, well then, yeah, the Constitution was designed, and we've used it. We used it to outlaw slavery. We used it to protect the rights of blacks and former slaves in the states. We used it to change the way we select the vice president. We've used it to determine what happens if the president becomes incapable of doing the job. We tried to get rid of alcohol. That didn't work, so we changed it again to bring it back. We guaranteed the right to vote for women and for people 18 or older. We've adjusted the document many times, or 27 times over the years. But when they talk about a living document, they're talking about it means whatever I want it to mean right now, and that's horse crap. Right? The Constitution is a compact. It is a legal document. It is effectively a contract between the states. Now, You have a contract with, someone to build a house, to buy a car, to have a cell phone plan, whatever. Do you think that you get to change the rules willy-nilly? No, you have an agreement and you have to abide by that agreement. And if there's a mechanism for changing that agreement, you follow it. The problem is the courts have taken the authority to say the Constitution is what we say it means. Well, again, that's horse crap. In fact, that is bad behavior. See, if we had a functional system, when a judge said the Constitution means what I say it means, that judge would be impeached. That literally would be grounds for impeachment, because that's bad behavior. That's a violation of their oath of office. It is a taking on of power that does not belong to them. But again, the American people, we aren't taught what the Constitution says. So the vast majority of people, when someone says, well, the Constitution is whatever the court says it is, they don't know any better. They've been taught that that's it, so they agree with it. That's why whatever else we do to fix things, I keep saying we have to have education of the American people as one of the foundations. It's got to be the bedrock of any changes that we make, because otherwise, all we're doing is moving the deck chairs around the Titanic. We got a Republican appointed a Supreme Court justice, so we're going to get better opinions from that. Yeah, and then the next president votes in some others. It's a nightmare. So, Trucker, you're more than welcome. That's why I love these live broadcasts. See, and it's one of the reasons why I'm hoping to get more interest. In fact, please share this around. Let other people know. It's great for people to ask questions, get feedback, get answers. That's why I want to do more of these. I just need to make sure that people will actually attend. It's not just me, talking at a screen. Shake Chili, thank you. Yes, I hope my channel grows as well. More importantly, I'm really hope that more people join this movement, join this idea of learning what the Constitution says. If you've seen much of my work, you'll find it up on the website. I believe what John Jay said, right? Every member of the state ought diligently to read and study the Constitution of his country and teach the rising generation to be free. By knowing their rights, they're sooner perceived when they're violated and be the better prepared to defend and assert them. That to me is not simply a nice phrase. That needs to be a movement. And I'm looking for people that will come along with me on this movement to educate ourselves to read. I've dedicated the last 2 years of my life, just between you and me, right? I gave up a 30-year IT career to focus full time on the Constitution study, on the book, on the program, on these podcasts, on these videos. I've done that. I want other people that are willing to spend a bit of time learning and then sharing what they've learned. And I think that is, more than just seeing numbers on a channel, which, hey, numbers on a channel are great. To me, I'd much more like to see people that are starting to learn and recognize when their rights are being violated, recognize when there's a problem, and then learn how to defend and assert them and actually see that happening. So when I see people like the hairdresser in Texas stand up in a courtroom and say to the judge, if you think it's more important that I follow your rules than my people, my family, and the people that work for me eat, then we got a problem. Right? I want people that are willing to stand up like that. So thank you very much. Should the electors be on the ballot instead of the POTUS candidates? Yes. Right. Short answer, yes. I go into this in more detail on the video on the mess we've made in the presidential election process, but yeah, you're voting for an anonymous party flunky, right? Yeah, regardless of who you vote for, whatever party it is, you're not really voting for a person. You're voting anonymously for some party apparatchik that is promised to cast a vote for that party's candidate. That to me is sick and twisted. Now, it's interesting is James Madison, if you look at the debates, and Madison wrote a letter confirming this, that what they wanted was they wanted you to actually vote for an elector in your House district. So the idea is someone in your House district would run for presidential elector just like they run for dog catcher, right? Or county commissioner. So you'd pick a person, a name, a candidate, and that person would then be tasked with voting for president and for vice president. And they thought, since the electors are appointed based on representation in Congress, by doing it by district made sense. The problem was there were several states that didn't like that. They wanted to manipulate the system because they wanted especially the larger states, wanted control of the presidency. Now, the compromise was, fine, we'll let the legislatures figure that out. And again, for 100, 150 years, it worked just fine. But again, when we started changing from a republic, when they tried to make us more and more like a democracy. By the way, if anybody talks to you about American democracy, interrupt them. America is not a democracy. We are a republic, and we are a republic for good reason. Right? But they want us more like a parliamentarian democracy, like they have in Europe. And that has a lot of problems. There's a reason why our founding fathers, the framers of the Constitution, did not create a parliament. They did not create an executive that was dependent on the parliament. There's a reason for that, and we lose a lot of that. So what I would love to see, yes, I would love to see my ballot saying, here are all the people that want to be electors. And if they have promised, if they've pledged to vote for a candidate, they should list who that candidate is for president and vice president. By the way, that should not be a ticket, right? They should say, if someone wants to vote for, Trump for president and Bernie Sanders for vice president, just put that down on the ticket. And then I can look and say, who do I think would be the best elector? By the way, if they don't want to pledge their vote, that should be on the option too. And the people get to decide. But to do that, we have to wrest control of the elections away from the political parties. And that's not going to be an easy pull. That's why I said it's going to take a lot of education to get people to recognize just how corrupting the influence of the political parties are.
I'd say a lot of the patriots are very ready to learn. Like I told you a while ago, many of them understand that a lot of their rights are being trampled over, but they don't know how exactly to defend them in court, or if they do get dragged into a court.
Exactly. You'd be surprised how many people I welcome. I met people may remember the name Lavoy Finicum. He was the farmer that was shot and killed. Was it Colorado or Arizona? No, I think it was Colorado. I met his wife, and a very nice lady. And they're actually suing the government for was it not unlawful death, wrongful death. And I asked if they filed criminal charges. And they're like, well, no. I said, well, I mean, I'm not telling you what to do, but I'd recommend it. What was done to her husband appears to be a crime. Yes, it's harder to get a criminal conviction than an opinion in a civil case. But I certainly would want the people who did this. I don't want the taxpayers paying for that person's mistake. I want that person paying for that mistake. Calindo, yes, it actually is amendment, the 12th Amendment about separate ballot for POTUS and VP. Originally, the VP was the first runner-up for president. So, George Washington got the most votes. John Adams got the second most votes, so John Adams was vice president. And that worked until the third election, when John Adams got the most votes and Thomas Jefferson got the second most votes, because John Adams was a Federalist and Jefferson was an anti-Federalist, and that caused problems. So they passed the 12th Amendment, which says there will be the electors have to cast separate ballots for president and vice president. They send separate lists, one for president, one for vice president. But the American people are not given that choice because the political parties have taken control of the election process. By the way, do you realize that primaries are not part of the election process? Primaries are the way private companies, private organizations, the political parties choose their champion. It has nothing to do with the election of president. It has to do with who they're going to champion on the ballot. But we've allowed them to so manipulate the system that effectively they've taken control. So rather than being able to choose who you think would be the best elector, or even who you think would be the best person that elector should vote for, your choice is whittled down to effectively two. And that's because that has nothing to do with the Electoral College. That is a state issue. And I'd love to see states, I think only 2 states in the union do proportional ballots. I would love to see some great legislation in the states to fix some of the twisted mess that the political parties have made of the presidential election. Dustin, a great format. Thank you. It's so yeah, I'm trying this new. All right, I'm willing to experiment. I would love feedback. Apparently, Dustin likes this format. I'm glad. I want to do some more of these. Keep your eyes open. I'm still learning this new software that I'm using to do the streaming to multiple locations. But my goal is I'm going to add a second live stream. So right now I'm doing the second Thursday of the month. I'm adding the 4th Thursday of the month. Again, 7 p.m. Central Time, which is where I live. That's 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time. So it should be a decent time. Life is good. If you have suggestions, if you ever let me know. Contact me through the website or through one of the social medias. I'm always open to new ideas. They may not work, but I'm open and listening. So I got one last question up here from James going, what's up? New subscriber here. He wants to start a constitutional reading club. So this is my foundation. Well, I thank you for the trust in what I say. It means a lot that, if you want to start a constitutional reading club, that you trust what I'm saying enough to use it as a foundation. I appreciate that. James, I don't know where you are, but I would love the opportunity. If I know where you are, if you go to the website, you'll see an events tab on the right-hand side. If I'm coming anywhere near you, please contact me because I would love to meet you and your constitutional reading club. I love meeting people that are really interested in this, and I think we'd have a great chance to sit down and chat and converse. So we've been going about an hour, almost an hour and 15 minutes. Before I sign off, I'm going to ask a couple things. One, I ask this all the time. It's really important. Please share this message. Share the video, share the story, share the information. This is not something we should be hoarding to ourselves. If you found value in this, hopefully you found enough value that you think you could share it with friends and family and introduce them to the idea of the Constitution and reading it and studying it and understanding it. That's great. I'd also love it if you went to the website, if you signed up for the newsletter, right? You can go to the website, there's a newsletter button on the right-hand side, or you just go to constitutionstudy.com/newsletter. Basically, I don't go crazy. I send out one newsletter a month, which basically is, some news of what's going on, some news of what's coming up, and not, I'm not flooding you. I do let you know if something important comes up. So when I schedule my next webinars, right, I send it out to that mailing list. So you'll be notified when the webinars come out. If you do that, it helps me, it's a great way to help communicate, to stay in touch. Now, also on the website, you'll see a donate button. Now, I haven't really made a point of this, but I want to start making a point now. Anything you donate through that website is used strictly to support this podcast. I don't collect any of the money. I don't keep any of the money. Everything goes towards the hosting services, the restreaming fees, the software, the services, the stuff that makes this happen, and the stuff that I use to make it better. So if you found some value in what we're doing tonight or any of the other stuff that I do, if you can donate, I would appreciate it. It helps offset the cost of putting this on, and that'd be wonderful. And last, there is a store. And I've been playing with this idea of a Constitution Study store. It's up there. You'll see the button on the top menu. Go to constitutionstudy.com/shop. And I've been playing around with some T-shirts. So I've got a Constitution Study shirt, and I've got the book, and I've started doing some more meme type stuff. And I've thrown a couple up. If you've got ideas, let me know. But I've got one up there. I think it's kind of funny. If you follow I like the movie The Princess Bride. So I did a spin off of that, and I basically said, hello, my name's the American voter. You stole my rights. Prepare to lose. So if you find stuff up there, let me know. Again, the store helps support me and all the other work that I'm doing. The donate button goes directly to the podcast and only the podcast. So if you can help, if you can come alongside and help, I would appreciate it. I'm looking for people that are interested and engaged and willing to join me in helping to teach and educate the American people. And if you can, anything you can do to help is greatly appreciated. And if I'm coming anywhere near you, please let me know. I would love to meet you and your groups and your organizations, especially if you're doing, whether it's a reading club, a study. There's someone I work with who they has a group called Restore the Intent. They're trying to get Constitution study groups in every county in the country. I think that would be an awesome thing to work towards. We can put you can find links on the website for that. It's, I don't want to just be, I don't want you and your little area and me and mine. Let's work together. Let's create something that can make a difference, not for us, but for our children and our grandchildren. When we talk about securing the blessings of liberty, we want to enjoy them. But I really I think we should be looking for our posterity and having them enjoy them. We've inherited a country. Depending on how old you are, it is different levels of freedom. I've been around a few years. I've been around a few decades. The country I inherited was a lot freer than the one we have now. And I want to work to fix that. I want to leave to my daughter a country that's in better shape than the one I inherited, not in worse shape. So a couple questions have popped in. What platforms currently streaming to? I'm doing YouTube, Facebook, and Periscope. The service I'm using, those are the only ones that look real interesting for me. So I'm there. It's also, by the way, available on the website. I didn't check. Actually, I should check while I'm here. But there should be on the Constitution Study website a live feed coming from my broadcast. I'm probably burying my internet connection. So my internet connection is probably screaming uncle right about now.
What's the legality of what's going on in Portland? Because then this was the government's just to not necessarily keep the peace, but I can't remember exactly, but.
Well, the biggest issue with what's going on in Portland is you have people who have elected representatives that don't want to do their job. And as terrible as and it may sound callous, I feel for the people of Portland, of Kenosha, Rochester, New York. I used to live in upstate New York. I have friends that live in Rochester, New York. I feel for them, but this is partially the consequences of their own decisions. The big thing to remember is there was a big thing about Trump sending in the troops. All right, President Trump can enforce federal law, meaning he can send in federal law enforcement to protect federal property. That's the federal courthouses. He is perfectly within his authority to protect federal courthouses. He cannot enforce state law. not unless the legislature of the state asks the Congress for help. Actually, the president has very little to do with it, believe it or not. Yes, as the executive, he can protect federal land, but if Portland or it should come from the state, right? If Oregon wants help, there's a provision, I forget which clause it is in the Constitution, that says that the state legislature can petition Congress to help them put down insurrections. Notice who's not listed there. It's not the president. It's the legislature. Now, the governor can do it if the legislature is unavailable, right? If the legislature is on recess, if they can't get together, then the governor has the authority. But they're actually asking Congress for the help. Sadly, the people in those cities, the government in those cities, the people elected, the people that were hired by the citizens of those cities and those states to enforce their laws are not doing it, and they're not asking for help. If nothing else, this should be the perfect example of why the people in those cities need to fire those in government. They need to be fired. I mean, if you hired a security company and their job was to, part of the contract was that they would drive by every so often, that they would deal with people who were trespassing on your property, damaging your property, right? If they would enforce the laws on your property and they didn't do that, would you continue to pay the bill? I mean, just think about it. If you hired a private security company to provide, rent-a-cops, right, to provide guards that were to enforce the state law, and they didn't, wouldn't that be a breach of contract? Then why are the people in these states, in these cities, putting up with a government that's sitting back going, oh, well, it's mostly peaceful. Well, mostly peaceful means partially not peaceful. It reminds me of a story I heard many years ago as a kid. There was one family, and the kids wanted to go see this movie. They were young kids. They were relatively young kids, right? But they wanted to go see this R-rated movie. And, dad didn't want them seeing an R-rated movie. And the kids, well, but it's a great movie, and everybody loved it. And there's only a little bit of bad word language in it, but other than that, it's a great movie. Well, my dad said, all right, let me think about it. And he comes back about an hour later, and he goes, well, you know what, kids? I made some brownies. These are great brownies. I used all organic flour, organic eggs, organic everything. I used the best chocolate. It was wonderful. There's just a little bit of dog poo in it. And for some reason, those kids didn't want to eat the brownies when they found out there's a little bit of dog poo in it. So when someone tells you that these riots are mostly peaceful, they're telling you there's a little bit of dog poo in that. Why are we putting up with it? Peaceful assembly is protected. I have absolutely no problem with that. People who are not being peaceful need to be arrested. They need to be arrested. They need to be tried. And if they're found guilty, they need to be punished. And if the government that you hired to protect your rights is not doing the job, then they need to be fired. They need to be held accountable. And anything else is just sophistry. It's just playing games. It's just pretending that we're citizens in a free republic. Effectively, what those mayors and those governors are saying, well, let them eat cake. As long as they don't bother my people, they can do whatever they want. Which is really interesting when you see, which was it? Was it Lightfoot who thought these were all fine until they showed up in her neighborhood? Or who was the mayor in Portland who he had to move because the rioters showed up at his condo building? And rather than dealing with the rioters, he moved. To me, that is cowardice. That is a dereliction of duty. And I'm sorry, but if the people of those cities, if that's what they want, they can't complain when that's what they get. And I think it's sad for the poor people who saw this coming and who knew better and were overruled. But part of living in a free country means you can move. I moved from the state of New York to the state of Tennessee to get away from that type of stupid. I am no longer a citizen of the empire. New York is known as the Empire State. I am no longer a citizen of the empire. I lived there for 50 years. I was born in New York City. I lived my entire life in the state of New York. I moved because they were stupid and because I didn't want to subject my family to what I saw coming. And that was long before, forget COVID, just the dictatorship that New York State has become. It's the same in California. It's the same in Oregon. It's the same. You have to decide: is it willing enough? Enough, or move? Anyone know the website?
Could patriots in Oregon sort of, I don't know, not put down, but sort of be guardians? Like not guardians, but people in Oregon. Not everyone there is liberal or voted for the current representative. I mean, I'm sure it's majority liberal, but so can some patriots still roam the streets and sort of try to guard? I guess I don't even know. I mean, they'd probably get hung by the government, but do they have any
again,
power to do that?
part of the problem is, I remember when California voted for a Republican president, not once, but twice. Right? States change over time. Yes, they are in the minority. That means two things. That means A, either they did not participate enough they were unable to convince enough people to vote for someone else. Now, part of the problem is the vast majority of the people in this country are ignorant. I don't mean stupid, I mean ignorant. They do not know. So that's why I say you can convince a lot of people of a lot of things if they don't know any better. So the first thing to inoculate them against that type of stupid is education. Remove the ignorance, and you're less likely to deal with the stupid. But again, if we're back to the same scenario, right? If you are somewhere where everyone votes against you, picture if you ever watched the movie 12 Angry Men, right, about a jury. The thing about a jury is a jury decision has to be unanimous. A criminal jury decision has to be unanimous. And the movie is about the whole interchange between these 12 people. You don't need to be unanimous. We have to grow up and make a decision. Is the benefits of staying in a city or a state that is controlled, that is detrimental to your rights and in some cases to your safety, is staying there worth more than moving somewhere else? Moving has costs. There's financial costs, there's family costs, there's emotional costs, there's work to be done, there's a lot to move. I'm not saying it's a minor thing, but we have to take responsibility and say, at what point do you say, I can't? I know a lot of people that they are staying in California because they are fighting for their country, their state. They want to fight for their state. The fight for the state for them is more important than the pain they have to go through for living there. And if that's their decision, God bless them. But they also have to decide if the fight's not worth it anymore. Well, then it's time to leave. And we have to take responsibility for it. We all have to make decisions. We don't have perfect answers. We have to decide how much is too much, and then we have to live with those consequences. And I feel for the people that are trapped there, but they're trapped there because of decisions they've made, either to stay and fight or to not actually pursue leaving, those are consequences. That's part of the consequences there. I lived in New York State a lot longer than I would have liked to. I would have been, there's part of me that would have been happy to leave New York State earlier, but I didn't because there were other things that kept me there. I had family there. As that changed, I was more willing to move.
I gotta tell my aunt that because she's like 2 months behind in rent for her business because of the whole COVID thing and shutting down business and whatnot. And it's just funny enough, there was like a riot that burned down a mall. It was like maybe a town over from her where she's located. So it's like, she's gonna have to get out of there because it it's not beneficial to stay there.
So it's 8:30. I'm going to try and wrap this up, but I got one last question that came in from Roof Koreans asking, what does the Constitution say about abortion? The only thing, it doesn't actually mention the word abortion, but what it does say is that you can't, neither the federal government nor the state can deprive anyone of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. So, as soon as there is proof that there is life in the womb, it is illegal to take that life except as punishment for a crime. So, and since the Declaration says we are endowed by our Creator, let me ask you: were you created in the womb or out of the womb? You were created in the womb. So, if you were endowed with the right to life by your Creator, who created you in the womb, then it is illegal for the government to allow that to be. It is illegal for someone to take it, and the government has a duty to protect that life. It is the purpose of government is to protect your rights. It is there to protect that right. And we talk about the stain of slavery on this country. The stain of abortion is orders of magnitudes worse than what was done. Slavery was awful. Slavery was cruel. Slavery was terrible. Abortion is so much worse. So again, I want to thank everybody for joining me. I will, if you keep leaving comments on the social medias, I'll try to answer them. But I hope to see you in a couple weeks. Next week is the Constitution 101. 2 weeks will be another live broadcast. Keep your eyes open. I'll pop in there. Thank you, everybody. And I hope not only will you join me on my next broadcast, but join the Constitution study, join the work that we're doing to help educate everyday Americans. Have a great night, everyone.